Advice: am I stupid? My wife might think I am. A short primer: dated for 13 years. Married for 8 years. No kids. Both my wife and I are professionals and travel a lot for work. This time, both my wife and I are traveling during the same time period. I am gone for 2 weeks and she is gone for 10 days. I am currently on the East Coast while my wife is in the Southwest. We have a system that when traveling in that the one traveling will call the other and tell them about their day, what the city is like and describe the city's attractions. We did the same with each other on this travel as well. She has been to the city I am currently in, but neither of us have ever been to her city. So she calls each night and describes her work, what she is doing and if she is having fun, going to tourist attractions, etc. She loves the city and wants us to vacation there in the future. So, all is normal. My work colleague and I have an agreement that if one of us is gone the other will periodically drive by and check the house. I called him to check in and he was confused. He stated that he saw my wife having dinner in town with another man. Maybe a work colleague or such. But she is not supposed to be in our hometown. I stated that she was supposed to be out of town, so I am confused. I asked his to do an early morning drive by the house to see what's what. So at the nightly predetermined time I called my wife, and she goes into this long holistic description of how the city is perfect for my allergies and our mutual outdoor hobbies. She was just tripping over herself with superlatives of the city, and I am just sitting there thinking, what are you talking about? I didn't let on what my friend told me because he stated that maybe he wasn't sure it was her. Now this guy knew her before me, so I know he knows what she looks like. So I think he was protecting me in his own way. So he stated that he saw the guy's car because he saw him get out of it in the parking lot, come into the restaurant and sit down next, not across, but next to my wife. Who does that in a booth in a restaurant? My friend drove past my house for several days and at several times and noted that in the day, both cars are gone but at night, they are both back. So I called her office to make sure she didn't come home early and they stated that she was on travel status until Monday. Okay, not good. My mind is racing and spinning to what is she doing? I am still on travel status until Thursday, so last night at the allocated time, she calls me all happy and lovey telling me she can't wait to see me. So she is still telling me she is in her travel city. I play the fool and rattle on like everything is swell. It almost killed me. I feel the anger anytime I think about her with someone else. Our marriage has been great, I thought. Several dates nights per week, sex 3-4 times per week, and I support her in her activities and friends. I can't really do anything where I am at, so I am asking for any advice. Before I get home. Story 2. I, 29M, just learned about a sibling 41F that was hidden from my sisters and I for our entire lives. I, 29M, just found out a few days ago that I have an older sister 41F. We'll call her B. I was raised in a rural town in Wisconsin with 2 older sisters, A, 33F, and M, 31F. Our childhood was better than most, but everything about our upbringing was all for show. We had to look like a happy family and act proper in front of others in order to keep this facade. Once our family was alone, we were not the happy family that others saw. My father drank and was very controlling over my family. My mother constantly guilt-tripped us and played me and my siblings against each other, etc. Once I had moved out of the house at 18, I knew I couldn't live my life continuing that legacy. Now, with that being said, I have not made the best decisions in my adult life. But, for every decision I have made, I will take full responsibility for and own up to it. I started dating a girl in college and we were in a relationship for about 4 years. During that time, my son, 8, was born. Shortly after he was born, I had found out that his mother was cheating on me with one of my best friends. We attempted to work it out, but there was no chance. Long story short, she now has 4 children from 3 different fathers, and I currently have full custody of my son. This will all play into the story later. Fast forward to now. Last weekend I was invited to an outing with my 2 sisters and their SOs. They live decently far away, so I should have suspected something. I packed up my son, girlfriend and her daughter, and drove to the place that they all had decided to stay that had activities for the kids to participate in. Once we got there, a lot of small talk was going on, and one of the SOs had taken the kids on a tour of the attractions, leaving me, my GF, both of my sisters, and one SO time to have a drink and talk. Once sitting down and talking a bit, my oldest sister, A, said, "There is something that we need to talk to you about." Cue anxiety. During this conversation, she had told me that we, myself, A, and M, all had an older sister. B, I didn't know how to process this. I had so many questions, but at the same time, I had none. A had informed me that B reached out to her sometime in September and had filled her and M in on all of the information that she knew. It turns out that B has known for the majority of her life who her real father was. I was told that my father and B's mother had her in 1980 when they were 19 and 20 years old. When her mother had found out that she was pregnant, she had called the house where my father was living with my grandfather and was told to get a paternity test done. Apparently, my father had talked to her mother, and they had both agreed to put the baby up for adoption as soon as she was born. She was born, taken from her mother, had her name changed, and was at the adoption agency for 3 days before her mother had returned to pick her back up. As far as I'm aware, that was the last contact that my father had with her until she was about 6 or 7 years old. My parents were married in 1986. Around that time, they had gone to court, attempting to get full custody of B. The court had ruled that they would get shared custody. My father would have to start paying child support, and was granted visitation time. When this child was 6 or 7 years old, she was introduced to my father. They had met at a McDonald's for the first visitation, spent their time, and went about their ways. The next visitation that was scheduled and my parents never showed up. After that, my parents completely abandoned the idea of being in B's life. In 1988, A was born, in 1990 M was born, and in 1992 I was born. Our entire childhood, we were lied to. Throughout our lives, B had known about my parents and had looked into our lives. As technology had advanced, she was able to see more and more about us. She had known who we were, what we looked like, and where we lived. She had occasionally seen us around at different times and places, but had never approached. When B was 19, she had applied for the police academy and needed family health information. She had somehow looked up our phone number and called. While on that call, she heard me and my sisters in the background. At the time, she had decided to not reach out, take the information she was given, and move on with her life. Until this past summer. Sometime in early August, B and her mother were at a fair that had some big-name concerts performing and had seen my parents, A and her SO, in attendance. At first, she didn't take action to say anything, but after a while she thought screw it and made the decision. My mother was using the restroom and my father was waiting for her. B and her mother had walked up to my father and B's mother said, "A stranger, how you been?" My father continued with small talk and hadn't acknowledged B whatsoever. She had attempted to get a few words in but was unable to get any sort of engaging conversation. Once my mother had come out of the restroom, she looked over at the group talking and immediately turned the other way and kept walking. My father saw her and called her over. She didn't have much to say at all. After they had a severely short conversation, they dispersed, going about their lives. In mid-September, B couldn't hold her tongue anymore and had reached out to A. From there, A had notified M. They had decided to refrain from telling me until after this big family vacation that was planned for October was over, in fear of me blowing up, ruining a good time for the kids and exposing the secret that my parents do not know that we knew. After the conversation with my sisters, I was given B's contact information, and for a few days I did not know what to do. Eventually, I decided to call her and hear her side. We had talked for a little over an hour, and I had learned the majority of this information from her. For the past few days, my sisters and I have been trying to figure out how to approach my parents and how our relationship should be after the conversation. As for my mother, I could care less if the relationship dwindled, given the past that we had endured with her. But I do not want my father to be excluded from my son's or my girlfriend's daughters' lives. My father has shown them the love and attention that my sisters and I had missed out on our entire childhood. I do not know the proper way to approach this, and any and all advice is greatly appreciated. I know how amazing this community can be, and I beg for all of your advice.